Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the HGP Correspondence Dinner. It's normally, the introduction normally takes 2 or 3 minutes, but I'm going to go on for an hour and 10. HGP believes strongly in freedom of speech, but the views expressed by myself, our reader, today's speaker, HGP members, and our guests are not the official views of the Humanists of Greater Portland. Our reader today is Jeff Strang.
Thanks, Pete. This book is from Free Will by Sam Harris, and he basically argues that there is no free will. The belief in free will has given us both the religious conception of sin and our commitment to retributive justice. The great worry, of course, is that an honest discussion of the underlying causes of human behavior appears to leave no room for moral responsibility. If we view people as neuronal weather patterns, how can we coherently speak about right and wrong or good and evil? These notions seem to depend upon people being able to freely choose how to act and think. And if we remain committed to seeing people as people, we must find some notion of personal responsibility that fits the facts. We need not have any illusions that a causal agent lives within the human mind to recognize that certain people are dangerous. What we condemn most in another person is the conscious intention to do harm. Degrees of guilt can still be judged by reference to the facts of a case, the personality of the accused, his prior offenses, his patterns of association with others, his use of intoxicants, his confessed motives with regard to the victim, etc. If a person's actions seem to have been entirely out of character, this might influence our view of the risk he now poses to others. If the accused appears unrepentant and eager to kill again, we need entertain no notions of free will to consider him a danger to society. Certain criminals must be incarcerated to prevent them from harming other people. The moral justification for this is entirely straightforward. Everyone else will be better off this way. Dispensing with the illusion of free will allows us to focus on the things that matter, assessing risk, protecting innocent people, deterring crime, etc. However, certain moral intuitions begin to relax the moment we take a wider picture of causality into account. Once we recognize that even the most terrifying predators are, in a very real sense, unlucky to be who they are, the logic of hating, as opposed to fearing, them seems to unravel. For better or worse, dispelling the illusion of free will has political implications because liberals and conservatives are not equally enthralled to it. Liberals tend to understand that a person can be lucky or unlucky in all matters relevant to his success. Conservatives, however, often make a religious fetish of individualism. Many seem to have absolutely no awareness of how fortunate one must be to succeed in anything in life, no matter how hard one works. One must be lucky to be able to work. One must be lucky to be intelligent, physically healthy, and not bankrupted in middle age by the illness of a spouse. Consider the biography of any self-made man, and you will find that his success was entirely dependent on background conditions that he did not make and of which he was merely the beneficiary. There is not a person on earth who chose his genome or the country of his birth or the political and economic conditions that prevailed at moments crucial to his progress. And yet, living in America, one gets the distinct sense that if certain conservatives were asked why they weren't born with club feet or orphaned before the age of 5, they would not hesitate to take credit for these accomplishments. Thank you.
Thanks, Jeff. A brief note about who we are. Humanism is an approach to life based on reason and our common humanity, recognizing that moral values are properly founded on human nature and experience alone. Humanism affirms the inherent dignity and worth of every human being. Since this is the only life of which we are certain, humanists believe that creative ability and personal responsibility are strongest when the mind is free from supernatural belief and operates in an atmosphere of freedom and democracy. And now I'd like to introduce today's program, Humanist Resistance, Advocacy, Community, and Courage in a Global Crisis. Religious authoritarianism, from MAGA in the United States to the far-right movement abroad, is reshaping global politics. Around the world, human rights defenders are being silenced, jailed, or even killed for what they believe or don't believe. The crisis is global, but so is the resistance. We're quite honored to have the president of Humanists International, who will map out the gravest threats to freedom of thought, share inspiring stories of progress, and deliver a roadmap for how humanists can build power and community to defend human rights. Please welcome Maggie Ardiente.
Thank you so much, Pete. Thank you. I see claps, but I can't hear it, but I appreciate it very much. It's such a pleasure and an honor to speak with you all again. I really wish I could be in Portland with you in person today. I miss your food trucks. I miss spending hours at Powell's. I miss your breweries. I miss your wineries. So I'm very sad not to be there in person, but I'm thrilled to reconnect after I think nearly 10 years. I think the last time I spoke to this group was in 2015 when I introduced my husband and former executive director of the American Humanist Association, Roy Speckhart, who had just released his first book, Creating Change Through Humanism. And now I'm the featured speaker, so yay, thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. And some of you I first met long before that, when the AHA held its annual conference in Portland in 2007, where Joyce Carol Oates received the Humanist of the Year award. So I'm grateful as to see many of you again today. I'm long overdue to come back to Portland. I was just telling Dave that you all should lobby to host the conference, AHA conference again. Maybe next year it'll be 20 years since, because I want to go back and have another post-conference tour at a winery. That's my #1 reason for sure. I left the American Humanist Association in 2017 after 12 wonderful years leading its fundraising and communications programs. And it was my first job after graduating from college, and I knew I needed to expand my knowledge of nonprofit fundraising and grow my experience as a leader in the progressive movement. That path took me to organizations like the National Homelessness Law Center, defending the rights of the unhoused, PFLAG National, fighting for equality alongside the LGBTQ+ community, and today, Physicians for Social Responsibility, mobilizing health professionals to protect our world from the threats of climate change and nuclear war. And for those of you, some of you may know, we have a PSR chapter in Portland, in Oregon. So if you're members of both, that's wonderful. But I couldn't stay away from the humanist movement forever. In 2020, I was elected to serve on the board of the Secular Coalition for America and became its president in 2022. A year later, I also joined the board of Humanists International and became its president last year, because no good deed goes unpunished. But in all seriousness, becoming president of Humanists International has been one of the greatest honors of my life. Because as difficult, as fractured, and as exhausting as things are right now in the United States, imagine living in other parts of the world where you can be silenced, jailed, or even killed for being a humanist. As humanists, we are more than our non-belief in a God or superstition. Our commitment to equality drives our support for democracy, the right to freedom of religion or belief, and the right to freedom of expression. Our commitment to compassion drives us to ensure that every person, wherever they may be in the world, is respected and can live in dignity. But in recent years, we have seen alarming changes for the worse. According to a 2025 report from Freedom House, global freedom has declined for 19 consecutive years, with more countries deteriorating rather than improving in political rights and civil liberties. Human rights organizations around the world have been targeted, discredited, defunded, and some closed altogether. There have also been a significant rise in far-right movements worldwide, with many taking power in countries once considered bastions of democracy and freedom, such as France, Germany, Austria, Italy, and the Netherlands. As disinformation and misinformation have grown in the media, populist politicians are laying blame on immigrants and minorities for inflation and crime. But let us be clear about the weapon of choice for this new authoritarianism: it's religion. While far-right leaders may present themselves as defenders of religious freedom and traditional values, in practice they are pushing to exclude minority religious groups and dismantle democratic institutions. Between 2019 and 2023, conservative Christian organizations spent nearly $1.2 billion on anti-LGBTQ+ and anti-trans efforts in Europe alone. Much of the funding comes from Hungary and Russia, but a portion is coming from US organizations such as Alliance Defending Freedom, the Heritage Foundation, and Christian billionaires such as David Green of Hobby Lobby and the DeVos family. In Africa, over 16 million have been spent in Uganda, Kenya, Ghana, Gambia, and South Africa to fund pro-life crisis pregnancy centers, support conservative political candidates, and lobby for anti-LGBTQ+ and anti-abortion legislation. In Latin America, millions of dollars in dark money are flowing into Brazil, Mexico, Colombia, El Salvador, Guatemala, and Argentina to establish evangelical legislative caucuses, oppose marriage equality, and lobby against reproductive rights. And in Asia, over $1 billion is being spent in South Korea, the Philippines, India, and Indonesia to also oppose marriage equality and fund conversion therapy initiatives. Now, perhaps we're biased by proximity, but some of the worst of this is happening right here in the United States, thanks to MAGA. Since becoming president of Humanists International, I've given speeches at a number of humanist events around the world. And no matter where I am, the first question I'm always asked is, what's it like living in the United States under Trump? And I'm sure most of you agree. The simple answer is, it's a nightmare. It's hell if hell existed. I have a go bag prepared and a handful of countries I'm ready to seek political asylum in if, and apologies for my language, the shit really hits the fan. I live in Washington, D.C., where I have lived for nearly 20 years. I love my city, and what Trump has done to my beautiful city is a travesty. We watched fences go up around the White House to lock out peaceful protesters, separating the government from the people it is meant to serve. We saw millions of taxpayer dollars squandered on cosmetic fixes for fountains and reflecting pools that are still broken because he's awarded no-bid contracts to his cronies. And don't get me started on the grotesque MMA cage fight on the White House lawn or the embarrassing lack of attendees during the 250th celebrations. More painfully, we saw the human cost. In the first year of this administration, thousands of dedicated career civil servants, including members of my own family and former colleagues, were abruptly fired. My former coworkers from PFLAG, specifically my transgender colleagues, chose to leave DC altogether, driven away by the sheer terror of living down the street from an administration that questioned their right to exist. In a city that voted more than 90% for Biden and Harris, the MAGA base are emboldened to live and travel in DC to the point where I can't go a weekend without seeing at least one person wearing a MAGA hat, something that hardly ever happened, even during the first Trump administration. Even now, nearly 2 years after the occupation, I feel a chill down my spine every time I pass a contingent of National Guard troops on our streets. That fear, the fear of mistaken identity, the fear of sudden unchecked state power, is something no one should ever have to feel. Trump isn't just taking pages from the authoritarian playbook, he's rewriting it. He's attacking the press, questioning election legitimacy, evading congressional oversight, expanding executive power, and decimating the federal government. He's destroyed our relationships with allied countries through unreasonable tariffs and backdoor deals with literal dictators. And of particular relevance to humanists, the Department of Defense, or the renamed Department of War, has cut the number of officially recognized religious affiliation codes in the US military from more than 200 to just 31, specifically removing humanist, atheist, Unitarian Universalist, and other minority religions and beliefs. And in February of last year, Trump signed an executive order titled Eradicating Anti-Christian Bias, establishing a federal task force aimed at identifying and eliminating what the administration perceives as anti-Christian policies and practices within the federal government. The task force, which operates under the Department of Justice, is tasked to review the activities of all executive departments and agencies to identify any anti-Christian policies, practices, or conduct. This has resulted in the exclusion of humanists from religious freedom circles, something we used to enjoy. When I worked at the American Humanist Association during the years of the Obama administration, not only did we get the opportunity to visit the White House and meet with members of his staff, we held regular meetings with the U.S. State Department's Office of International Religious Freedom, the U.S. Commission on International Religious Freedom, and the International Religious Freedom Roundtable. I personally trained foreign service officers on the international humanist movement. And inclusive language, such as the freedom to believe or not believe, was regularly used by everyone. Today, much of these institutions have been compromised by the increased involvement and funding of Christian nationalists. In fact, the term religious freedom seems to no longer include humanists and other non-believers, and much of their work is solely focused on persecuted Christians, with complete disregard for persecuted Muslims, Jews, and other religious minorities. All of this is enough for some of us to just stay in bed, hide under our blankets, and wake up when Trump is no longer president. But I remember the wise words of Ruth Bader Ginsburg, who said, quote, "I am optimistic in the long run. A great man once said that the true symbol of the United States is not the bald eagle, it is the pendulum. And when the pendulum swings too far in one direction, it will go back." Thankfully, there are things happening right now that give me hope that the pendulum will swing back in a humanist direction. Progressive candidates are winning a number of local and state elections, and there's optimism that Democrats will take back control of the House by capitalizing on Trump's failures in his second term. Despite the conservative majority of the Supreme Court, they've struck down Trump's tariffs, upheld the legality of mail-in ballots postmarked by Election Day, and preserved birthright citizenship. Nonprofits are turning to the courts to protect democracy. My own organization, Physicians for Social Responsibility, has successfully sued the administration twice to reverse rollbacks on environmental protections for gas and mercury standards. And when I look beyond our borders, the world is rejecting Trump's authoritarian tactics. His tariffs have proven to be a failure in fixing global inflation. His war in Iran remains deeply unpopular. And right-wing leaders who've mimicked his leadership were defeated in presidential and prime minister elections in Canada, Australia, Hungary, and South Korea. This tells us that the majority of people are choosing a different path, a path that gives me hope for the future. This is the path of the humanist resistance. It is courage in time of fear, joy in time of despair, and community in time of isolationism. Now, what does this resistance look like? It's courage in times of often paralyzing fear. Even when odds seem stacked against us as humanists, it's the strength to stand up for what's right, even when we stand alone. It's speaking out when a family member denigrates trans people. It's peaceful protesting in the face of ICE officers and National Guard troops. The resistance is joy in times that feel hopeless. Joy is a radical act of defiance because far-right political movements rely on your exhaustion and desire to stop fighting back, to maintain power. What are we fighting for, if not to laugh, celebrate, love, and seek happiness as humanists? As the feminist anarchist Emma Goldman said, "If I can't dance, I don't want to be part of your revolution." And the resistance is community in a time when our country seeks to divide us. There's strength in coming together, in sharing our stories and supporting one another. Humanist groups like Humanists of Greater Portland provide safe spaces for like-minded individuals to find solace in shared values and take action to defend those values. The humanist resistance is about creating a world where all people can live with dignity, freedom, and opportunity. It is about fostering a more humanistic society where reason and compassion guide our actions. I am proud that Humanists International is leading the resistance against authoritarianism, fascism, and isolationism around the world. As the largest and only global representative body of the humanist movement, we defend humanists at risk of persecution and violence, we lobby for humanist values at international institutions, and we work to build humanist communities around the world. Today, we have over 130 member and associate organizations in over 60 countries. Our flagship publication, the Freedom of Thought Report, is our most powerful advocacy tool to help governments and international bodies recognize and protect the rights of humanists. It is the only global report specifically dedicated to tracking the systemic discrimination, legal persecution, and social marginalization faced by humanists, atheists, and the non-religious across the globe. This report shows that the overwhelming majority of countries have laws that deny atheists the right to identify, revoke their right to citizenship, restrict their right to marry, obstruct their access to or experience of public education, prohibit them from holding public office, prevent them from working for the state, or criminalize anything that may be deemed as critical of religion. In the worst cases, the state may execute the non-religious for leaving the religion of their parents, deny the rights of atheists to exist, or seek total control over their actions and beliefs. The Freedom of Thought Report is the only one of its kind, and it has been used by government institutions around the world, including the US State Department, to raise awareness of individuals who have been discriminated against for their humanism or atheism, and by other countries to elevate the recognition of humanism as a belief system equal to traditional religious beliefs. The report is also used in our advocacy at the United Nations in New York and Geneva, the European Parliament, and the African Commission. Earlier this year, I had the distinct honor of traveling to Brussels to speak to a vice president of the European Parliament to ensure they follow Article 17 of the Treaty on the Functioning of the European Union, which states that, quote, "The Union respects and does not prejudice the status of churches and religious associations or communities in the member states, and the Union equally respects the status of philosophical and non-confessional organizations," which includes humanism. But the Freedom of Thought Report is more than just research and data. This report has saved lives. One example is the story of Mubarak Bala, the former president of the Nigerian Humanist Association. After renouncing Islam and identifying as an atheist, he was held for 18 days in a hospital because his father considered atheism to be a mental illness. After escaping, he joined the Humanist Association of Nigeria and campaigned for years for the group to become an officially recognized NGO. Through in-person meetings, conferences, and social media, Mubarak discussed humanism and promoted the group's non-religious beliefs. But in 2020, Mubarak was jailed with no due process or even the ability to contact his family for violating a law related to, quote, "insulting religion and disturbing the peace." During his time in detention, he was surrounded by openly hostile inmates, prison guards, and police officers, and he was warned that if he fought the charges, he would be killed and his friends and family would be targeted. He was given an outrageous sentence of 24 years in prison, garnering the attention of the international community, thanks to the advocacy of Humanists International. For years, we worked with lawyers, spoke to the media, and demanded his release through the hashtag Free Mubarak Bala campaign. And I know a number of local humanist groups that were part of the American Humanist Association also participated in this campaign. After a years-long legal battle, Mubarak's sentence was reduced to 5 years in 2024, and he was released for time already served. But it was not safe for him to remain in Nigeria for obvious reasons. After countless death threats and multiple fatwas calling for his death, he was able to temporarily relocate to Germany on a special German government program with help from the Humanists Association of Germany, based in Berlin, where he is now safe. Mubarak is just one of many people Humanists International has helped get to safety, but it's the courage and bravery of our network of humanist organizations around the world that work as a lifeline for humanists by building community. Humanists International provides annual grants to support global humanist projects around the world, with special attention to developing countries. Groups have used these grants, ranging from roughly $500 to $3,000, to establish the first and only humanist group in their respective country, create humanist weddings, funerals, and baby naming ceremonies, and bring prominent speakers to their local events and meetings. But much of these grants are used to help humanists organize in countries where there remains significant challenges in being a non-believer. In the midst of an ongoing war and a challenging sectarian government, Free Thought Lebanon, led by Mazen Abduhamnan, used grant funding from Humanists International to establish a free thought telephone hotline for humanists in Lebanon seeking resources and support. In a majority Catholic country, Humanist Alliance Philippines International, or HAPI, also used grant funding to write secular children's books and educational videos to support humanist parents teaching ethics and humanist values. Faithless Hijabi, an associate member of Humanists International based in Australia, is an online space specifically for women questioning or leaving Islam, and one of our grants provided 15 ex-Muslim women access to professional mental health therapy for free. In Nigeria, where so-called witch hunts and witch accusations are increasingly common in order to steal a person's land, an organization called Advocacy for Alleged Witches, led by one of my fellow board members of Humanists International, Dr. Leo Igwe, provides permanent shelter for people who have been displaced by accusations of witchcraft, many of whom have been subjected to violence, while advocating throughout the country against superstition. And in a country where marginalized voices are rarely represented in mainstream media, the Peruvian Association of Atheists established a YouTube broadcast channel to highlight humanist stories and champion democratic values, even getting an opportunity to interview a candidate running for president in Peru. These are just some of the incredible work humanist organizations are engaging in all over the world. You can learn more about our work of Humanists International at humanists.international. Follow us on social media and sign up for our emails. Even better, if you happen to be free in the next couple of weeks, this August 7th through the 9th, take a break from the chaos of the United States and flee to Canada, where Humanists International is hosting the annual World Humanist Congress in Ottawa in partnership with Humanist Canada, and the theme is Humanism as Resistance. We have over 500 humanists from around the world registered to attend, and while tickets are sold out, if you are strongly interested in attending, come talk to me because I'm the president and I can make things happen. I'll conclude with these final thoughts. We know that we are living in unprecedented times. We're reminded that democracy is fragile and it will require all of us to protect and preserve it. This means staying engaged with the issues, supporting freedom of the press, and being vigilant about misinformation. This means holding our elected officials accountable, demanding transparency, and speaking out against abuses of power. This means actively participating in the democratic process, voting in every election from local to national, and supporting organizations that defend democracy and promote humanist values. This is the humanist resistance. You are a part of it, and I'm proud to stand with you. When accepting the Humanist of the Year award in 1984, the prolific science fiction writer Isaac Asimov said this, quote, "We humanists celebrate humanity and want humanity to survive. We recognize that if humanity does survive, it will be only by its own efforts. Never can we sit back and wait for miracles to save us. Miracles don't happen. Sweat happens. Effort happens. Thought happens. And it is up to us, humanists, to expend our sweat, our effort, and our thought. Then there will be hope for the world. Democracy, justice, and the freedom to believe or not believe are core to our humanism. They are our shared responsibility. And we must stand together as allies across planet Earth and united in our humanist values to protect them. Thank you very much.
Oh, thank you. Let me, what did I do with, oh, there they are. Okay, we're gonna get into questions, and we already have Hank Robb on Zoom, so why don't we go to Hank?
Hi, thank you so much for your presentation. I really enjoyed it and felt buoyed by it. The way we talk about this, we use phrases like believer and non-believer, secular and sectarian, religious and non-religious, theist and atheist. And I wonder what your thought is on my notion that we would be a lot clearer and also make a positive strike if instead of those we used supernaturalist and naturalist, and that not only are people free to believe in various forms of supernaturalism, but they're free not to believe in supernaturalism at all.
Thanks, Hank. That's a great question. And I would almost defer to people who have greater experience about language and the power of language than I certainly do. I would say that from my perspective, I think one of the reasons why we lean toward believe, not believe, and secular versus religious is that it's actually, I think, just simpler than even saying without superstition or non-superstitious or naturalist. I think that even if I were to go to somebody and say, are you a naturalist or not a naturalist, they might not actually know what that means. I think it's not a very common phrase. And now we need to do some work on that. There's work to be done. But I'm of the mind that we need to meet people where they are. And I think that sometimes the simplest language gets through to people a little bit more because they understand it better, even though it's language that I wouldn't use. I mean, in a more humanistic world, we would use those terms more actively, and we'd even be more proactive in our beliefs, right? So, I call myself an atheist and a humanist, but of course I lean humanist because it talks about what I believe. But I can see the effectiveness of atheists because it's very simple to say, I don't believe in God, when it's so common that people believe in God. So I think that that's sort of where my thinking is with regards to the use of language. I just try to do my best in speaking to people who really have no idea what we do, no idea what a humanist is, sometimes isn't even clear about what an atheist is, and try to speak to them in that way that would help them understand. I'll also say, I know this is a little strange, but I know some atheists who sort of still believe in things like, not believe, but follow their horoscope and things like that. Like they'll say, I'm a Virgo. And I will tell you, that drives me nuts almost more than the God thing. I'd almost rather you believe in God than believe that the constellations and stars are aligned in a certain way, and this is why you behave the way you do. It admittedly drives me nuts. So that's my one big pet peeve. But I know some humanists and atheists who kind of are okay with that. And this is where I would have a deeper conversation about supernaturalism and things like that with them. So that's
exactly my point. Thank you for making it.
fair. Okay. But when I do that, I'll just say that when I do that, they get mad at me. So I try not to. I'm like, okay, if you want to believe that because you're a Virgo, you're very organized, that's fine.
Okay, how about question number 1 here?
Thanks a lot, Maggie. It's great to see you again. I've long been impressed by Secular Rescue, the program of Center for Inquiry, and have supported them. What's your impression of them?
I think it's the more secular rescues, the more grants we can give to help humanists and atheists escape their countries, seek asylum, is a wonderful thing. We need more. I mean, again, I've sort of cited, again, the billions of dollars that Christian organizations have that do this same thing, of course, for Christians. But they've got tons and tons of money at their disposal. And I really wish we had that, but we don't. So the more organizations that help with that, the better. And yeah, I'm really proud of the work Humanists International has been doing. We were founded in 1952. The American Humanist Association was one of the founding members of Humanists International. And we have this incredible, rich history of helping individual humanists and atheists escape political persecution. And I'm very proud to lead the organization and help continue that work.
In that same vein, Kurt Mackey on Zoom has the question, do religious organizations work with Humanists International, or do they consider humanists a foe?
The evangelical Christians, yes, as the foe. But funnily enough, and I'm remembering some of my time, again, a lot's changed now, but when I would attend monthly meetings of the International Religious Freedom Roundtable here in DC, I mean, I was sitting next to the head of public policy of the Church of Scientology, who is still the head, by the way, and she's a wonderful person. And you know that humanism and Scientology, there's like nothing in common, but with the exception of the fact that we deserve a place whenever there are conversations about international religious freedom, because we are all across the globe. So funnily enough, we do find ourselves in allyship with Hindus, with Scientologists, with sometimes Mormons, Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Whenever, in fact, I think some of you may know that related to the Department of Defense's removal of religious designations, actually the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints were first removed, and the Mormons really spoke up, and then they actually had to put him back. So you know that we have a lot more in common, I think, than what we're against. And one of them is related to, again, the freedom to believe what you want and live in whatever country that you want, no matter what your religion is. So we do work with a number of particularly minority religious groups. It's a little harder with some of the more bigger evangelical groups, for sure. In fact, I'll mention that, like in particular, Alliance Defending Freedom, I told the story of Mubarak Bala. They're taking credit for his story. And if you notice some of their promotion and work that they've done with them, they don't even mention that he's a humanist. They just say he was somebody who was critical of Islam. So they mention not at all the fact that he led the Humanist Association of Nigeria, that he is an out and proud humanist and atheist. They just delete that, even though, it's ridiculous to retell that story in such a way. And so one of the things we've also been having to do is to stop these Christian organizations trying to claim victory for religious freedom when they were based for humanists first.
Okay. Number 2 here. Yeah, go ahead.
Let's talk now about universal consciousness. Where does the International Humanist Organization stand on that topic?
Sorry, did you say universal consciousness?
Consciousness, yes.
Consciousness. And you may have to explain that a little more to me, because I have a thought about what that means, but you can tell me more.
Is conscious, and there is such a thing as free will in the universe, and that many things are sentient that we don't think are sentient now. Has that topic ever come up with the humanists?
I would say not specifically. I mean, I think the basis of our values largely comes from the Amsterdam Declaration for Human Rights, and it particularly outlines sort of basic human rights that the UN follows, that most democratic institutions follow. And again, that it sort of comes back to the freedom of religion or belief, the freedom of expression, the freedom of thought, just sort of the basic right that wherever you live in the world, you should be able to live free and be who you are. So I think it really just draws from that. I hope that answers your question.
I think so. So
Okay.
There's no problem with thinking that notion if that's what you think.
I suppose. From my perspective, are you talking about like vegan rights or vegetarian, like things like that? I'm sort of not sure.
We'll move on.
Yeah.
Okay.
Question 3.
Yeah, I am culturally Aries. But anyway, seriously, I remember a very cogent observation from Leo Igwe regarding, followers of both Islam and Christianity in Nigeria, that they're less afraid of what these enemy religions or non-religions are to them. They're less afraid of them than what they're going to do to them, what their own people are going to do to them if they speak out. So much of that is fear-based, and so we need to be beacons of courage. Speak out about things like that. Maybe more and more people in those areas will say, I've had it with all this. That's just my observation there.
Yeah, I mean, I want to really emphasize the bravery and courage of people like Leo and other people, particularly in Africa and parts of Asia and parts of Latin America, where they are the only person speaking out about humanism and atheism in their country. Sometimes their groups are as little as, 3, 4, 5 people, but their impact is so important. And what they do is so important because of the challenges that they experience in their own country. We know people who have had to break away from their families. There are people who've had to, again, seek asylum in other countries. This happens on a pretty regular basis. And we are doing our best to help people, but at the same time, it's important for us to make change in the country by the people who are still there. So I don't know if I mentioned this in my speech necessarily, but Mubarak Bala in particular, he's in Germany right now, but wants to go back to Nigeria. He wants to go back and fight for the rights of humanists and atheists in his country. There's only so much he can do while he's seeking asylum right now. But it's dangerous for him to do so right now. But it takes a lot of bravery to say that even in a country that doesn't want you there and wants to kill you for your beliefs, that you want to go back there and make it easier for people to thrive and to be who they are. I mean, I don't want to say anything, but even here in the United States, I mean, I don't know what's going to happen after the midterms. I might be very extreme here, but a lot of bad things could happen. I feel like it'd be a mandate for Trump if the Democrats don't win the House or the Senate, and that a lot of really serious things could happen to the point where humanists and atheists individually are being targeted. And I don't want to scare people. Maybe I'm just being a catastrophizer, but again, I didn't imagine a lot of things would happen in neither the first or second Trump administration, and yet here we are. And we could be one of those same countries where literally it's going to be difficult for us to even have meetings like this. It's going to be difficult for me to criticize Trump in the way that I did just now in this entire speech. And then it'll be up to us whether we are going to stay here and fight or if we're going to flee and try to get safety so that we can continue our work wherever we are.
Catastrophizer. I like that. I'm going to have to use that. We've got a short question from Al Christians, short for him, that says, let's see. Oh, it's on 2 pages. There's already a national security finding that says we are the enemy. MAGA already has court decisions equating dissent to giving aid and comfort to our enemies and equating association with conspiracy. How can we move on? Oh, it moved too far. How can we topple this, I guess is what it says.
It is the vote. It has to be the vote. There's unfortunately not, I feel like there's not much we can do, right? So we're taking the like I mentioned, court cases and suing Trump. That's slowing things down. That's slowing things down, right? And yes, there were some optimistic outcomes of the Supreme Court, but there were still some wins for Trump, for sure. And particularly related to Trump, the wins at the Supreme Court are related to allowing gerrymandering with some restrictions to voting. Like all of that is going to be happening. If they're not already happening fast, they're happening at least slowly. And again, challenging the results of the election and things like that. All of that is to sow that discontent and sow that mistrust amongst our election system. But we have to put that aside. You have to vote. We need to. I almost think we should all move to red states and vote in red states because the system's kind of already stacked against us to a degree, but we can turn it around. But that seems to be the only way. It's really difficult to imagine, doing anything else other than no, I can't. This is recorded. Okay, I'm not going to encourage any kind of anything like that, but that's going on in my head. But it's very scary. I mean, it's very scary. And I wish that it wasn't, that we had the courts. I wish we had the, free and fair elections completely. But, we've got to work with what we have. And the only way to do that is to win the midterms and then win in 2 years and certainly challenge Trump if he's planning to run for a third term.
Question number 4 here at Friendly.
Joyce.
Maggie, you haven't mentioned the big communist countries. Would you say the religious persecution is less in those countries, and perhaps instead the persecution is more political, but we don't have that kind of pro-religion approach?
Yeah, and I hope I'm answering your question right. Thank you so much for that. Yeah, with regards to countries like Russia and Afghanistan, I wish that the Freedom of Thought report in particular had more data on that. The only thing that we can, share is just information that is as public as they can be. But of course, we know humanists and atheists exist in those countries. They've contacted us via email. They've contacted us through WhatsApp and through our Facebook groups and things like that. So we know that they're there. We know that there's significant crackdown on any kind of anti-religious sentiment or even particular religious sentiment, depending on the country, obviously. So yeah, I mean, even the evangelical Christians, again, we do have something aligned with them in that they're fighting for their people in their country to exist in a country where religion is tied in with the state. But that happens with us too. But it's very difficult, I would say. I think those are bigger questions and a bigger fight related to the political world. So there's a lot. I'll just say that the Freedom of Thought report is quite dense. But we basically cover every country. And if you're interested in learning more about the rules and regulations and policies in each country and how humanists live under those conditions, the report shares some details about that. And it also shares, whether or not countries are moving again toward more authoritarianism or countries that are actually improving some of their policies for atheists and humanists.
Okay, we have a comment here from David on Zoom regarding the horoscope thing. It's sort of a fun metaphor to play around with. I don't personally take it literally. It's sort of like Myers-Briggs or the political compass in that regard.
I'm sorry I even mentioned it. So, someone mentioned supernaturalism, and so I couldn't help myself. But yeah, I agree. Yeah, it's just how do we say? I used to, I worked at various organizations, and so had a lot of really great colleagues and all of that. And I just think that when they mention the horoscope and they mention who they are, and that they use it to sort of explain sometimes bad behavior, that's where I go, are you sure it's because you're an Aries, or is it because you're you as a person, not because of the circumstances of your birth, when you were born and all of that? And I think Neil deGrasse Tyson says that, isn't there like a 13th constellation that we don't even include in the horoscope? I think maybe because it doesn't, I don't know why, but you can see Neil deGrasse Tyson's thing on that. Yeah, I agree. It's for fun, for people who like it. It's fun, no judgment. But I think my only issue is just when it starts to explain bad behavior, which I've seen happen sometimes. I'm very sorry. That's my hot take. That's my one hot take for today. I apologize.
A little anecdote. My brother and I, when we were traveling musicians, after a show, we'd be talking to the audience, and quite frequently people would say, "What sign are you?" And often we would lie and they'd say, "I knew it."
Exactly.
Question number 5.
Different star signs, even though you're twins.
Oh, and I'll say one more thing too. There's more now. I don't know. I just learned about this. You don't only just have a sign. You have like a moon rising or a sun rising or this is in this orbit. So you're actually like 5 different horoscope signs now. I don't even know what any of that means. And the moment I heard that, I'm like, oh God, just stop. And so I have to throw that out there as something that I'm sorry, I think is a little silly, but if you like it, it doesn't really cause too much harm, I don't think. Yeah.
Got to have fun with it. Okay. Number 5.
Yeah, hi Maggie. So my question has nothing to do with horoscopes. I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about humanists seeking asylum. The grounds for asylum, is it based on political opinion or membership of a political or social group? And are there NGOs that would help in terms of proving the well-founded fear of persecution? And what are the countries that are most sympathetic towards allowing humans seeking asylum?
No, thank you for that question. That's a great one. With regards to other organizations that we've worked with Amnesty International quite a bit, Freedom House as well, in order to help get asylum seekers. It also is helpful too as well when we can legitimize people. So, you know, we get lots of emails all the time that are, I'm this person, I'm living in this country and I'm an atheist and I need help. And it's hard for us to examine all of them. We used to have a full casework program under the Humanists at Risk program that was tied with our Freedom of Thought report. But it's a lot of, I mean, Amnesty International does a lot of this, but they have teams of dozens focused on individuals who are trying to seek asylum. We had one person. And it's challenging, it's emotionally draining, it's really heartbreaking to hear more from these people who are trying to hide, they're trying to, you know, promote their humanism, but it's very difficult to live wherever they're living. So we try to use resources that are provided like from groups like Amnesty and others to help get them to where they need to be. But quite often they're just still where they are, and we do our very best to just, again, keep in touch with them via email or WhatsApp or, again, Facebook groups, private Facebook groups, and just try to give them resources. There are a lot of human rights organizations out there that are doing a lot of great work that have, you know, millions and millions more in the budget that we do. And we just try to do our best to just direct them there. There have been a couple of cases where we have helped people seek asylum in other countries, particularly in Europe, like I mentioned with Mubarak Bala. But that is admittedly rare. We have a particular case from somebody who in Indonesia who also was challenged under a, you know, criticism of religion blasphemy law that we helped get to Nepal. But, you know, obviously they don't want to live in Nepal. They want to move back to where they are. But, you know, the laws aren't changing in Indonesia right now. And so they have to just sort of be where they are right now. And we know how difficult that is. And again, I wish if we had millions and millions of dollars and more staff dedicated to that, we'd be able to provide more direct support to these folks. But at best, we can keep in touch with them, try to get them resources from other human rights organizations, and if we can, help move them. But that is rare and also very difficult depending on the rules and the laws of that respective country.
Okay, question number 6.
Yes, I'm wondering about what your approach is to talking to people who disagree with us. I think that we should try to break down tribalism. And I think that Trump's greatest political appeal is his ability to divide people. So the question of tribalism, how do we deal with that? Those people that are in Trump's tribe and don't seem to be, reason doesn't seem to appeal to them.
Yeah, that's a great question. I wish I knew the answer to that. I wish I could almost provide more. Yeah, that's really hard. I don't know. It's very hard. Look, I live in a 95% Democratic city who all hate Trump. We all hate Trump here in DC. Like the people who actually live in DC, not Washington. There's Washington over here, and then there's DC over here. And that's really hard because so I live in this very nice Democratic, but you know, Portland's like this, right? I can say that. I don't know how much the political winds have changed in Portland or in the state, but in DC, we're largely a Democratic bubble. And, you know, it's for me, because all my family knows who I am, the MAGA side of my family, I have zero connection with and don't talk to. So I know I'm not the best example of what it means to regarding tribalism and, you know, trying to break down barriers. I would only say that I know there are a lot. I will only say that, of course, what you hear in the media and in social media and in other things, it's always an extreme view, right? It's the extreme evangelicals. It's the extreme MAGA. You know, I want to think that the people who are wearing MAGA hats in DC are maybe reasonable, maybe. But it's really hard when, again, I feel that they're very emboldened to support who has been the most morally bankrupt leader we've ever had in our country's history. It's hard for me to reconcile that with a human being. It's just very difficult for me. So I wish I had the answer to that. And this is where I might just sort of maybe look to history and thinking that, these are things that we've maybe gone through before, even though I wasn't around for that, and that, we still have many, many more years to go. And, again, the pendulum will swing back in our way. And in the meantime, at the very least, we should at least treat each other with dignity and respect. And we should at least recognize that people do have the right to believe what they want to believe. Again, just as I believe I have the right to not believe and to be a humanist and atheist, everyone else also has the right to be who they are. And so I try to just remember that you have your right. But I also think that it is good for people to surround themselves with people who support them and love them and care about their values. And, life is short. This is our only life. And I'm not crazy about spending a ton of time with people who don't think I should exist or should live in this country because my parents were Filipino immigrants, or, that my LGBTQ plus loved ones shouldn't exist because they're trans. That's really hard for me. And if anyone has a great answer to that, I'd love it. But the only one I guess I can come up with is simply that, we do have a right to believe and not believe, and we should at least treat each other with dignity. But it's getting harder and harder every day. Sorry, folks.
Okay, Hank Robb on Zoom has another question.
Well, I was just, I typed in, there is a Yiddish word for concepts like moon rising in the house of your sign, and that word is mishigas.
That's great.
Okay.
If someone can't explain the
But if
those,
you,
I don't know what it means when you're like Mercury, like when people say Mercury rising or even Mercury's in retrograde. I don't know what that means. What does that mean? Does that mean it's a bad day or a good day? I have no idea.
to return to what you were just saying, though, often you were stuck using language like non-belief rather than language like what I do believe is in a natural world rather than a supernatural world. And if believing in crystals and the power of crystals and transubstantiation were in the same bucket, then it would be clear the difference between what we favor versus what other people favor. If people want to believe in the power of crystals or transubstantiation, they're all free to do that. We want to believe in a different thing, those things that are natural, rather than that whole bucket of your horoscope and your moon rising and transubstantiation and all of that.
I think and thank you, Hank, for that. I mean, I think what I'll say to that is, it's one of the reasons why I try not to completely dismiss someone if say, oh, I'm a humanist, and they say they're a humanist, and they say, oh yeah, I don't believe in an intervening God, and I don't pray, and I don't go to church, and I don't believe in religion, but yes, I think the horoscope is interesting, and maybe one time I think I saw a ghost. I at least try not to completely shut down the conversation if they believe in some things that are quote unquote supernatural or not a part of the natural world. I think it's also assuming that people think that, for example, ghosts are part of the natural world. So I think that's where also language can come into difficulties as well, because some people really believe that they saw a ghost. Thanks for the emoji. That they saw a ghost, or that they experienced a supernatural experience, but they wouldn't use the word supernatural. I think they'd say this was real. And that's where I think it becomes difficult for us to have some common language and common ground when I think reason, they won't buy into reasonable beliefs. They won't say, oh, well, that was, if I'm like, well, maybe it was a coincidence. Maybe it was just light shining in the window, or maybe, no, they believe it wholeheartedly because they want to believe. And I think that's the kind of thing that we need to think about even more. So beyond the belief in God, it's what makes people feel this tie and connection to things that are supernatural. Is it because it makes them feel better? It makes them connected to people who they've lost and loved? Is it because they like explanations about their behavior and explanations about who they are? Because we're always looking for identity, and sometimes it's just easier to look to a horoscope and say, oh, this is why I am the way I am. I think those are interesting questions. And I think it's good for organizations like yours to consider that when attracting people, right? But I would definitely say I would not want to cut somebody off from joining a group like this or calling themselves a humanist simply because of those things. We don't have to agree 99% of the time. Even Catholics don't do that. But we should find the main things we agree on and work toward that. And then I think we can get more people to a more naturalistic view of things.
Okay, I've got a question from Zoom here that is, I think it's auto-correcting things, but I'll try and figure it out. All 12 planets positioned in the sky, for example, in a specific constellation, are analyzed. The planets move in and out of the constellations on a predictable path, so an astrology chart represents the placement of those planets at birth. Many universities had seats of astrology and astronomy, or they were combined until Christian ideals questioned those seats and eventually eliminated them. Comment? There was no question. I guess just okay. Well, then let's go to Joyce here.
I discovered in Latin America is there's a great deal of mix between Christianity and indigenous languages. And I don't know if that supports more freedom of thought or less. Or you mentioned Peru, and that surprised me because that's one of the places where I saw so much of that mix. And I don't know about other countries of the world, but does that move us so a little bit away from, maybe lessen the need for prosecution or persecution of certain non-religious people? Am I making any sense at all?
No, I just hope I'm answering your question right, because you broke up a little bit on my end. But I mean, again, Humanists International, while primarily we are fighting for the rights of humanists and atheists to live free and thrive wherever they live in the world based on their beliefs, we understand that religion and sometimes cultural aspects of a certain country or a region in the world are quite intertwined. But that doesn't necessarily mean that we're necessarily against their culture or against, sort of, indigenous rights or First Nation rights or things like that. I think you can have a lot of those beliefs and those cultural aspects, but still call yourself a humanist or an atheist and be a part of whatever community you want to be a part of. I hope I'm answering that right. I'll only just mention that in particular, we're going to Ottawa for the World Humanist Congress in just a couple of weeks. We're working with First Nations and Indigenous groups to help put together a very wonderful, culturally rich program, because we know we're coming into a nation where Indigenous rights and First Nation rights are very important, and we respect that. We also understand that some of them have that tied to religion, and there's spirituality associated with that. But that's okay. I think that we're not trying to convert everybody. I'd love to, but we can't convert everybody in Canada to humanism. We can still be, though, very respectful of the origins of the I'm probably not saying this right, but just those Indigenous groups and communities. We can be very respectful of them and respectful of that, and find ways we relate to humanism. I just think that it's okay for all of that, but we're fighting for the same rights. It just depends on who you are.
Make them more tolerant of us.
Wait, I'm sorry, I missed that.
That's what I was trying to say, I think.
Oh.
Versus that mix, make them more tolerant of us.
Absolutely. I would, again, because we have so much more in common with minority religious beliefs, certainly, than the majority. I mean, because again, we're all fighting for the same thing. We just, what's wrong with freedom?
Well, on that note, Gail has a question on Zoom here. What is the relationship
Official humanism and Judaism and the Jewish people?
I think I can only say that the secular humanists of Secular Jewish Humanists. Yes, they're, oh my gosh, I'm already forgetting their name, but they're led by Paul Golan, who is a wonderful person who's based in New York. Secular Humanist Society of Judaism, I believe. They're a wonderful organization. I'm trying to get them to join Humanists International. I think there's, I think, a number of humanists and atheists who identify are also Jewish. They're secular Jews, they're atheist Jews. So I think that, again, the more folks we can get from religious traditions in any way, shape, or form is great. And maybe I'll just leave it at that. Is that okay?
Okay, whoops. Al Christians popped in again with a comment. I once interviewed a graphologist who brought along their astrologer spouse, and they asserted that both graphology and astrology always reveal the same truth. Make of that what you will.
I'm not sure what graphology is. What's graphology?
I'd have to, Al.
Handwriting analysis.
Handwriting analysis.
Oh, handwriting. Oh, okay. Okay.
Okay.
Okay. How about this? I will only just say, and gosh, I'm like, should I do a presentation about why I'm against horoscopes? I'm happy to do that in the future. But I guess I'll just only say that, again, I get it. I get people want identity. They want to belong. They want to be part of a group. I mean, this is why we exist. This is why humanists do what we do. We want to belong, right? We don't want to isolate ourselves and say we're and not participate in society in some way. And I think that, graphology and horoscopes, they're a way to do that. And I think that's great. I like to focus on, again, the ties that we have related to what we believe, which is human rights and dignity and democracy, and this being the one life we have. And it's why I'm proud to call myself a humanist. I'm proud to be involved in the humanist movement, because yes, it is, we are good without a God, but I love to focus on the good and like the good things that we could be doing to help make this world a better place.
One last comment, I believe, or do we have another? Oh, we have more here. Sure, go ahead.
Okay. I've seen your title change intermittently over time, it seems, and it seems like you've been involved in a lot of different groups. So you just mentioned positions of social responsibility that you're still part of, apparently, and then PFLAG, I think you were at least part of for a time, and AHA. I'm just wondering, what are your titles now, or what different groups do you lead, or have you led in the recent past?
Yeah. So, yes. So right now, my paid day job is Physicians for Social Responsibility, and I'm their director of philanthropy and development. So I focus solely on fundraising. We're a staff of about 8, so it's a relatively small organization, and we're dispersed, across the country. I work remotely. I think one of the things I was looking to go toward, I mean, how about this? I never cared about nuclear weapons until Trump. And all of a sudden I thought to myself, and by then I had put in 7 years at PFLAG National, and I love PFLAG National. Oh my goodness, I started there when we were a staff of 10, and when I left, we were a staff of 33. We had great success in fundraising. Again, during the Obama years and the Biden years, there was a lot of great success. Wonderful team there. And for those of you who don't know, PFLAG used to stand for Parents, Families, and Friends of Lesbians and Gays, and now it's just PFLAG, and it encompasses support for, all allies of the LGBTQ+ movement. And yeah, I was there for 7 years, but I recently became elected as president of Humanists International, which is just a volunteer position of the board. And I knew that I kind of needed a different position that sort of helped me balance both. There was a lot of great demands at PFLAG, again, wonderful. It was kind of like victim of my own success, kind of. I'm like, oh no, now I have like a team of 5 and this organization's bigger, and that means a lot more work. And in some ways, I kind of wanted to go back to working for smaller organizations where I feel like I could make a bigger difference. Like I built the fundraising program at American Human Association pretty much myself. Again, we were also a staff of like 6 or 7 people when I started. And then when I left, it was, I want to say like 21, 22, which is really great. I'm really proud of helping contribute my work to helping small nonprofit organizations grow. So, but yeah, so for Physicians for Social Responsibility, that's my day job. And then my volunteer job is president of Humanists International.
Thank you.
Well, we have one final comment, I think, from Hank Robb again. Johns Hopkins was the first university in the U.S. in which the Department of Philosophy was not located in the Department of Religion. That's it. And I want to thank you for a wonderful talk and for putting up with our fetishes with astrology.
I did not mind at all. Again, I thank you. Oh yes, of course, please. Thank you so much. I so appreciate it. You take your time out on a Sunday. You're dedicated to this group. You're helping promote humanism. It's so important what you all do. I'm just more than happy and honored to be a part of it. And yes, I will come back because I'm running out of books. I really need to go back to Powell's and get more. So
we'd love to have you.